Welcome back to the 10 Adventures podcast. We're back again this week with Mico interviewing me. Mico just has a bunch of questions. He's like, we should talk about this. We should talk about that. And every time he says that, I go, this is a great idea. And so today, Mico wants to talk about multi-day walking and trekking adventures in Europe. And because I've spent months and months exploring Europe on foot, I'm going to answer all his questions. So, Mico, welcome back yet again. You're becoming a regular on the podcast.
Thanks again, Richard, for having me. And I'm excited to talk about today's topic because I think I'm going to be planning a trip to Europe this summer. And I'm hoping to try to get some ideas from you. Hopefully, it's not too late to book. I don't think it is, but I really want to get into the hiking and the trekking and the walking in Europe because that is part of the world that I haven't explored myself. And I'm ready to once again kind of flip the seats and ask you a few questions about Europe.
Yeah, it is a wonderful place to walk. And I know you've done a ton of stuff here in North America and in all these exotic places around the world, but there's something about Europe that's just totally unique. And hopefully I'll be able to, communicate that because I'm just in love with walking and trekking holidays in Europe.
Okay, great. Well, I think for anybody else who's listening to this or watching this and doesn't really know much about the draw of European hiking and trekking and walking culture, I have the same question, the first question for today, which is basically what makes Europe such a fantastic destination for these multi-day trekking adventures?
Yeah, so it's like a feast for every sense, and a lot of the hardship that you're gonna have, if you go backpacking in North America, a lot of the hardship is gone. And so, you have these stunning places to walk from, coastal routes, inland, mountains, Mediterranean, all the way up into the Arctic in Scandinavia. There's just, stunning places and so much variety, which means you can almost go on a walking tour any month of the year. So that's the starting point. There's just so much variety and beauty. There's also a really great setup in terms of dedicated routes. So there are things called the GRs, which are Grand Randonnée in French. So like big walks. And there's also lots of little regional walks that they're waymarked. They have services set up to facilitate that. There's accommodations and restaurants. Next is there's just great access. So you can use public transit to get to the start at the end. You don't have to do these circular routes like you have to do in a lot of places. You can do linear walks, and I'm a huge fan of linear walks. Um, there's great lodging options. So if you're in the mountains, there are these little mountain huts. There's little family run inns. Some places there's luxury places you can stay that are 5-star, which when you're sweaty and tired, like, just getting a shower is pretty fantastic. But to check into an affordable 4 or 5-star hotel is great. One of the things people absolutely love are luggage transfers. So instead of having to lug your, enormous pack or pay for a porter to come with you, there's really affordable luggage transfer options. So basically you leave your bag at reception in the morning, you get to your next hotel, it's already sitting there for you. And then there's the obvious, there's the history, the culture, the food, and you eat so well. It's healthy food, you're not eating boil in a bag, dehydrated meals. You're having incredible meals. If you like wine, there's incredible wine. And it's just, you work hard every day and then it's just a great, great night sitting in a small village's central square with a great meal and then having a shower and clean clothes. There's just so much to love about a walk in Europe.
That is so wild to me, Richard, because as I'm the kind of hiker who's, I did a lot of hiking in the Rockies, and to me, a multi-day means that I'm roughing it. I'm carrying all my gear with me. Whatever it's 30 or 40 pounds or whatever it is. I'm taking that multiple days, and I'm certainly not having coffee at a cafe partway through that. So the idea of, good lodging and food, it's just it's something I've yet to experience in my time hiking around different places in the world.
Miko, the cappuccino, in your morning break, it's not, gorp from a plastic bag. It's a freshly made cappuccino and an artisanal pastry. I'll tell you, that's, that's one of the best things. Just like I love coffee. So having these great coffees and, then trying like, "Oh, look at this. What's this?" And you're like, "This is incredible." Like, you can't even buy pastries of that quality or cheese of that quality here at home in North America. It's just a feast for the senses.
So I know there's a lot of different trails around Europe, and it kind of also overwhelms me when I look at the different activities that I can do there. For somebody who's new to looking into long distance trekking in Europe, what kind of things should I or should we consider when choosing a trail? What different factors would you think that would be important to think about?
Yeah, so, like, anywhere, the first thing comes down to difficulty. I think in Europe, there's a little bit more to difficulty in terms of, like, how much time do you wanna spend exploring. When I do stuff in the Rockies, we'd have long days. Once you stop, basically you eat and go to bed. I did the Via Francigena last year with my wife, and we had the same kind of approach. We had long days, gone long distances. It was hard and we could do it, but we didn't give ourselves any time to just kind of enjoy the villages and explore. So difficulty is not just how hard you can go, but how hard do you want to go to because you want to explore stuff. The second is the season. So if you want to go hiking in the Alps, you can't go in May; they're all snowbound. Conversely, some of the stuff like the Caminos, if you want to go in July and August, it is so hot. I personally wouldn't be able to do those, and I have friends who would wake up at 2 a.m. and walk from 2:30 to 8:30 and then chill out under a tree
Oh
for
wow.
8:30 till 2 and then or 8:30 till 4 and then walk, in the afternoon cool down. So, you got to look at the season and be really, aware of, what you want to do. Uh, the next thing is like what interests you. And I started Europe only doing the mountains. I've started to really like looking at other options like pilgrimages, exploring like under visited parts of Europe. I really like just walking between the villages, and that's a lot of fun for my wife and I. And the last aspect is kind of access and availability. And so access depends, where do you want to fly into? I was just actually helping out a long-term customer, and they want to go north from the Dolomites to Austria. And kind of what they want to do is really, really tough, actually, flying in and out of Austria. And so it was looking at, okay, well, if you can get good airfares to Venice, then we can, Dolomites make a lot of sense. But if you're stuck on flying into, Vienna, for example, it's going to be a pain to get to the starting point. It's like a 10-hour journey by public transport. So just figuring out where you can get to, because flights, like I know flights this year are really expensive, and then also availability. And so, kind of a big part of our business starting right about now is people that want a self-guided private trip for the Tour de Mont Blanc, or the Lagavulin Trail in Iceland, or the Alta Via One in Italy. And ask them to say, you know, they're sold out, or we might be able to get you on a date, if you're really flexible. But if you're looking for kind of the highlights, the most popular trips, and you're listening to this right now, it's probably not going to be very much available. So people start booking the most popular trips back, almost as soon as, like, we have people putting down deposits already for 2026, just so they know when reservations open, they'll be the first one. So they'll get, if they want hotels, they'll get hotels. If they want a certain start date, they'll get that start date, just so they know, okay, this is going to happen and I'm not going to be, in hotels I don't want, or doing a start date I don't want.
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword some ways, right? When you can have such amazing trekking and walking and an area that has so much variety nearby, yeah, you're gonna have a lot of people looking into it. So I guess, maybe a big takeaway here is to, start planning your trip early and um, you know, start thinking about what you want to do, and maybe it'll fit in this year, maybe it'll fit in next year. You know me, I'm kind of a little bit spontaneous, so I will probably take whatever trek I can get as long as I can get myself out there. But no, I'm happier to hear you say that there are many different trails to pick from with many different, I guess, characteristics. And maybe if you can help me whittle down that list a little bit, maybe cheat a little bit, I want to ask you what would you say are kind of some of the top most iconic multi-day treks that I can do in Europe, or that anyone could do in Europe, and why are they at the top of the list?
Yeah, so before I answer this, I just want to stress there's so much variety in Europe, and Europe is a bit like everywhere. There's over tourism for the stuff everyone knows, and people that want to do the Tour de Mont Blanc, there's like 100 different treks in the Alps that are all really spectacular. The Tour de Mont Blanc is, super spectacular, but you can get just about the same, quality of views and experience and still book it in May for, the summer. You still find availability if you're just willing to go, a valley or two south, for example. So the ones I'm going to talk about first are kind of the most iconic that people may have heard about or are the most popular. These are also the ones that either I've met the most people that have done them or the ones we sell the most here at 10 Adventures. And so the first one is the Camino de Santiago. Um, People have heard of it from the Paulo Coelho book. There was a movie about it about 20 years ago. It's one of, the most iconic walking trails on earth. One of the most well known. What a lot of people don't realize is it's actually a bunch of different routes, and it just mimics the routes people used to take, centuries ago on a pilgrimage to the cathedral at Santiago de Compostela in northwestern Spain. The most popular is the Camino Frances. This is also known as the French Way. It starts in a beautiful little village called Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which is in the French Pyrenees, and it goes about 800 kilometers to Santiago through northern Spain. It takes about a month to walk. A lot of people do that, entire route, but a lot of people choose to do the last 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers, because it's hard to get a week off or a month off, but they can get, let's say 2 weeks off. Maybe the second most popular Camino de Santiago is the Camino Portugues. It goes north from Portugal, officially starts in Lisbon. Most people start in Porto. There's two variants. One goes along the coast, which is so well known for just being spectacularly beautiful. The other kind of goes up central Portugal, also beautiful. I love throwing in a swim in the ocean on a hard day's walk or bike. So I really love the coastal version. The full route from Lisbon's about 650 kilometers, about 25 days. Most people start in Porto and it's about 2 weeks. So those are probably the two most popular routes, but there's a few other routes. There's the Camino del Norte, which starts in Irun, which is a city in northern Spain near the French border, and it goes along the Spanish coast. It's really, really beautiful. The problem is it's really hard to book in summer because all the accommodations are booked out. It's about 45 days, 865 kilometers. The Camino Primitivo starts in a beautiful city called Oviedo. It takes about 2 weeks to complete. The Camino Ingles was for English travelers who had come across by boat. It's super short. It can be done in about 5 or 6 days, about 120 kilometers. And the one that's been on my bucket list for like literally 20 years is the Via de la Plata from Seville. It's over 1,000 kilometers, 6 weeks to hike. It's not done very often. It has a lot of road walking. It has bad signposting, but there's something in me that just draws me to that walk. And I know at some point my wife and I are going to do it. So, that's everything about the different Caminos. And they're just so popular. That is the gateway drug for so many people into long distance walks. They do one of those and they say, okay, I'm hooked. What do I do next?
That's really amazing to hear how there are so many iconic hikes in a kind of a relatively small part of the world. Like I think of other greater regions, like I think of let's even just putting South America out there. I can think of a handful of hikes that are the iconic hikes to do in this entire continent. And you just rifled off like more than that for just a smaller section. For I know Europe is comprised of many countries, but still they're all so close together. But you still have these very popular and iconic hikes that you can access. And I think it's kind of remarkable that there's that much outdoor and natural beauty in that part of the world.
Yeah. And those are just the Caminos. So there's two other kind of legendary mountain walks in the Alps. Maybe three, but one of them isn't as well known. So the first one is the Tour du Mont Blanc. This is the classic. This is, people go to Everest Base Camp, they climb Kili, they do a Camino, and they do the Tour du Mont Blanc. This starts and ends in Chamonix. You hike out. It's beautiful, beautiful views. You hike into Italy, eat some pizza, get some pasta, hike into Switzerland, have some fondue, and then come back, see the beautiful Lac Blanc, and then come back into Chamonix. It's if you do the full circuit, it's 11 days. You stay in these beautiful mountain huts where you're living in a dorm with other people, but they're up high with great views. It's about 170 kilometers, but a lot of people have started to do like a 6 or 7 day trip where they just focus on the highlights. There is some walking, on lower level roads in the valleys, and the highlights say, okay, let's just give you the best 7 days or 6 days of walking you can do. And so that's one where are just like getting the last few self-guided spots that are available right now as we record this. And actually, there are lots of guided trips as well that still do have some space. People really love the self-guided option for the Tour de Mont Blanc. And then kind of on the other side of the Alps, there's the Alta Via one in the Italian Dolomites. The Italian Dolomites is one of those places that is just it knocks your socks off. There's few other mountain ranges where you just kind of go, holy, this is different from everything. I think Glacier National Park in Montana is one of those places where you just look around and say, this isn't a normal set of mountains. And so the Altavia, you stay high up in these mountain refugios, which are just in spectacular locations of just, your high alpine looking out at other peaks. Again, you're eating great Italian food, drinking cappuccinos. The best strudel I've ever had is at one of the huts at Lagazoy, where my wife and I still talk about that strudel. You start in a town called Debiaco, which is just north of Cortina. Cortina is a great mountain town to be based in. And you walk south going by Lago de Brais, which is beautiful. Go over Paso Falzarego, which has these incredible World War One trenches built into the mountain. And it's kind of unreal when you see where the front lines were in World War One. And you keep going through just kind of incredible view after incredible view until you come to a bus stop near La Pisa, and then you go to Belluno. And the nice thing about that is you can get in and out via Venice, so it's really easy to get to. I guess talking about the Tour de Mont Blanc, it's in and out via Geneva. So the nice thing with both of those is it's really good no matter where you are. You fly to a major airport and there's either trains or buses or, an hourly transfer service that's going to get you right to the start without any of the rigmarole that, some trips you got to take a bus and then a train or you got to fly into a really small airport. So if I were to say kind of the three most popular, those, the Camino, the TMB, and then the Alta Via, those are kind of the three icons um, if you're going to go to Europe.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of a few of those, and they are definitely on my bucket list, which I think is probably growing as the minutes tick by in our conversation today. But what I also really love that you talked about is actually just the customizability. Like with it sounds like you can have these trails in a few different ways. You can have it the full route of 10 or 11 days, or you can get the highlights of 6 or 7 days. Because I understand, not everybody has all the time in the world to go do these walks. So it's really interesting as I read more and more about the treks in Europe, how you can get that level of customization. Now you've been talking a lot about obviously the highlights and the iconic ones, and you touched on it a little bit earlier. But there are, I've heard, some lesser known trails that are just as good and probably would be considered underrated and deserves a bit more attention. Would you mind sharing maybe a little bit of your experience of what those more hidden gems are?
Yeah, definitely. So there are thousands of 1 week, 2 week, longer walking itineraries in Europe. Kind of, I remember I used to have a map of France that had all of the footpaths, and it looked like, there was more footpaths than there were roads in Canada here. And so, kind of no matter where you go, there's going to be a footpath that you can follow. I'm going to share a few of the kind of alternatives to the ones I shared earlier. So the Camino is great. It's, super well supported. Maybe the only downside is there could be 1,000 other people walking the same walk as you. In one
Right.
sense, it's great. You can meet a lot of people. In one sense, you never kind of get the tranquility, which I think on walks is one thing I really like. Last year, I mentioned my wife and I did the Via Francigena. This is a 3,000 kilometer path that starts in Canterbury in Rome and or Canterbury in England, ends at the Vatican in Rome. It follows the route of the Archbishop of Canterbury in 990 as closely as possible. The whole route is spectacular. I talk to people, everyone, there's kind of no bad part of it. But I think the part in Tuscany where you start in Lucca, which is, just out, very close to Florence, and you end at the Vatican in Rome is really, really special because you're walking through Tuscany and you're actually walking through some of the best parts of Tuscany. So you imagine you're seeing these great, stunning views of the Tuscan countryside, these incredible historical villages, and then you're having just some of the best cuisine and wine in all of Italy. So the Via Francigena is spectacular. When my wife and I did it, there was 13 people total that was walking the same day as we were. So we were going through villages where there's no tourists, there's just locals and, the 13 of us. And, you might stop in different villages, so you wouldn't see the same people. You might only see two one day. And 5 the next. But just to have that tranquility was really special for my wife and I, really special to have that time together. This year in 2025, it's a Jubilee year. So if you do walk at least 100 kilometers on the Via Francigena, all your sins are forgiven. So that is something. If you are Catholic and you've got some issues with your conscience, this is a great way to to get rid of those those issues that are bothering you. And so that's, I think, a great option instead of the Camino. But the Camino is still great. Moving to the TMB, um, there is a route that starts in Chamonix, but instead of going around Mont Blanc, it goes to Zermatt. So Zermatt is this incredible car-free mountain town at the base of the Matterhorn, just this iconic peak. And the route is more difficult. It's a bit longer. It's about 200 kilometers. Takes between 10 and 14 days. Uh, it is just every day is just a slog going up and down, up and down. You're seeing these charming little Swiss villages, and it actually follows the TMB for the first 2.5 days, but it is just this absolutely spectacular route that kind of starts in, I think, probably two of the best mountain towns on earth. And when you get to Zermatt, definitely spend a couple of days there because there's some wonderful hikes you can do all around that area. And so when the TMB is sold out, I often say, hey, try the Haute route to Zermatt because it is really, really special. But it is, I'm just going to stress, it is harder. People think, oh, I can do it. Um, it's, even if you're in shape, it's a good slog. Um, so that's the alternative for the TMB. The last alternative, the Alta Via. The truth is, for the Alta Via, is the Dolomites are just so popular right now that it's hard to find space anywhere in the Dolomites. So um, the good thing is, kind of no matter where you go in the Dolomites, it's spectacular. The bad thing is you can't, even right now, it's getting hard to find availability in like the towns in the Dolomites. If you wait a couple months, I remember I looked last year and booking.com was 99% sold out across the entire Dolomites on each individual day. So it was like, you couldn't put a trip together yourself. Um, but there are some great hut walks in the Dolomites that you can piece together in a couple days. There also is on 10 Adventures, we have one of these kind of forgotten corners of the Dolomites, this chestnut walk. I think it's 4 days. And everyone who goes there says, this is incredible. Like, this is the one part of the Dolomites that wasn't developed with ski hills and gondolas. It's super traditional and people just love it. It's not a ton of tourists. So if you want to get away and still find a part of the Dolomites to explore, that one's great. And also, if you want to go a bit farther south, Triglav National Park in Slovenia is the kind of southeastern end of the Dolomites. That's becoming really popular, and it's really beautiful there. So those are kind of the three alternatives that are not as well known as the original ones I talked about.
I really love that, Richard. And again, I'm just kind of mind blown about how many ways you could do these trails and how many trails there are. Like I said earlier, you think of iconic trail like the Inca Trail in Peru to go into Machu Picchu, and there's probably only a few ways you could kind of do that or do alternatives to that. But it sounds like with a little bit of a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of research, you can kind of almost kind of create any trail you want, and leading to basically limitless possibilities on how to piece these trails together, which also kind of it also kind of adds the added layer of the logistics of planning a trip like this, and going into all the deep dive research in this. So before I dive too far into my own research, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think in terms of the logistics of the trip, of making that trip? What do you think are kind of the biggest challenges that a person would face when they're looking to plan their trip in Europe, especially these multi-day treks?
Yeah, so I think one of the real challenges is around accommodation. So a lot of the mountain huts, you can't go into booking.com or Expedia and find the mountain huts. These are, often
Mm,
run by a family for the
yeah.
last 50 years. They fill up, they know they're going to fill up every year on word of mouth or people phoning them. So, like, just sourcing accommodations is tough. I know a few years ago, or actually, it was pre pandemic, I was organizing a trip for my family into the Jungfrau region in Switzerland, and they didn't even have email addresses. And so I was calling up. Luckily, I speak French, but in the Jungfrau region, they mostly speak German. So it was like, you speak English? No. Do you speak French? Okay, we make it work with French a little bit. but just, you're having to phone up to make a reservation and you get 3 of them booked and then the 4th one says, "No, no, we have space the night before though." And then you call back the other 3 and you kind of go in this loop back and forth and back and forth. And so it's a lot of work. Um, the benefit of if you just book a tour is everything's organized by a guide who lives in that area. He calls up his friends and, he often or she, they're booking tours all the time. They know what the availability is like. They can say, "Oh, I know we're not gonna be able to get August 17th because I know this, this pinch point is sold out. August 18th will work." And so, if you value your time, having someone do all that for you is just so much easier, especially if you're doing a point to point trek. If you're just going to go hiking in the Alps, then you can just find something on Airbnb, rent a car, and go do that. But if you want to do a trip that's going to go from village to village or mountain hut to mountain hut, um, the accommodations are tough and they sell out so quickly. Like the Via Francigena, I was actually looking, or not the Via Francigena, the Alta Via, I was actually looking just out of interest a couple days ago. And it's like, holy crow, like a lot of the spaces are completely sold out from June 15th to September 15th. Like the dorms, every single night are sold out. And it's still February, and they were sold out, talking to one of the guides, they were sold out as soon as they opened at the start of January or, at the end of last year. So the first aspect is accommodations is tough. The second aspect is one of the beauties of Europe are luggage transfers. All you carry is a
Mm,
day pack with, some food and some water and maybe some rain gear. And
yeah.
so organizing those on your own is both tough and expensive. Often it's finding a local taxi company or transfer company that'll carry your stuff from one village to the next. Sometimes, your walk might be, a 4-hour walk, but to actually get a car between the two, you've got to go all the way down the valley, around, back up. It could be a 2-hour drive where when you find out, holy crow, just that one transfer could be $200 or $300 just for your 2 suitcases. And so, this is again where it's often cheaper just to book a trip because those luggage transfers are going to be for, dozens of passengers, or they've arranged a service so each day it picks up all the luggage and just goes from point to point to point. And so that's the second thing that I think is really challenging. The final thing is stuff goes wrong, and if you don't speak the local language, it's really hard. I'm not talking about emergencies, but you leave your Kindle in one, in the last village, you leave your orthotics, at the last accommodation. A lot of people aren't
Yeah.
comfortable having these, "Oh, I think I left my, my night guard, my bite guard for when I sleep in here." Those are really hard things to communicate. And then how do you get them? And so when you book a tour, the nice thing is you also have usually a 24/7 hotline where you can just say, a lot of them are WhatsApp now. You say, "Hey, I forgot my bite guard in the washroom in the last refugio. Can you help me get it?" And then you'll have someone while you're out hiking will arrange and sort all these issues out. Again, all these little things that, travel is a series of little things that go wrong no matter how well you plan. Little thing, a flight's delayed, a bus breaks down, there's, inclement weather, all these little things. And so, trying to sort those out yourself is kind of fun, but you and I have both done a lot of self-supported travel where things go wrong. And after a while, it's nice just to be like,
Absolutely.
I don't want to lose a day of my
Yeah.
trek because I forgot my bike guard or my Kindle. I just want it to be at the next place I'm at. So,
Yeah.
uh,
I agree with that completely. It's traveling sometimes can just be continuous problem solving. And I think that's really great. And it's a good skill to build, but there are those times, when I'm just so frustrated. I'm like, I just wish this was kind of just magically done. And I know that I remember thinking, booking a multi-day trek sometimes, and I've done it before many years ago, booking in the Rockies, and I'm doing the exact same thing. Okay, I can get this site on this day, but on this day I don't have it, so I might have to detour to this place. And yeah, it drives me up the wall, and I can definitely see the benefit, especially when you're dealing with in a place like Europe, when you sometimes you don't have all the time in the world, and there's a lot of things to see. I know there's a lot of great things to do there, and having it dialed in for you, it sounds really really nice. Can I ask what would you say is kind of the biggest difference between more like a guided trek versus an independent one? Because I mean I see a lot of these trails, and I think there's lots of different ways to do that, and I'm kind of curious for myself actually. What method I should go this time.
Yeah, so one thing we've seen a lot is the guided trek is really decreasing in popularity in Europe, and there's kind of two issues. One, it's expensive to have a guide with you 24/7. You got to pay their daily rate. You got to get a hotel room or a place in the huts. You got to feed them. Sometimes you have to transport them, so it's expensive. Um, and also people like going on their own. They like to have these moments with, the people they love. And so the more popular trips you can still do guided, but something that's come out is self-guided. And I personally
Mm.
love self-guided. And what this is, all the logistics are taken care of. All your accommodations, your luggage transfers, some of your meals. You can even get other things taken care of. And you basically show up, and typically you have an app you put on your phone, and it shows you where you are on that map, and it shows you where you have to go each day, and you just kind of you follow your map, and you are kind of your own guide with this map that you have on your phone. And it's really special. And some of the things I love is you can start whenever you want. Some days, especially early on, I'm up at 5 a.m. I don't want to sit around the hotel for 4 hours for the rest of the group. I just want to get hiking as soon as I can get my breakfast in. Other days, you're tired. You want to sleep until 9 or 10, and you don't want to rush out. And so you have that ability to start and stop when you want. And then when you're hiking, you can go your own pace. And there's nothing worse when you're the slowest person on a group or you're the fastest person on the group. And it sucks in both ways. And I've been on trips in both cases, and you're like, oh, this is just isn't fun. So being able to, you know, hike your own hike on these self-guided trips is just incredible. And you also get to start whenever you want. So, on one of these guided group trips, it starts in a certain day. You've got to get your flight in the day before. You have no flexibility. On these self-guided, you can typically customize it. So you can say, I want to start on August the 15th, and I want a rest day on day 5, and I want a rest day on day 10. And all that can be done. So you just get the exact trip that's personalized for you. And, travel's best when you get it exactly how you want it. Like, all of us are different. And so this is kind of one of the big innovations in travel, I think, of getting the trip that's right for you and the people you're traveling with.
Yeah, that's really great. It honestly sounds like kind of the best of both worlds. You got that safety and security of a trip that's, planned and not planned by somebody's doing it for the first time, researching Europe for the first time, but it's actually a trip that's, been vetted by locals, vetted by experts. And I really like that idea.
And it's actually one other thing. It's actually like super economic as well. Like, we had one of our guests, and they said, I think I was paying below minimum wage for the person to actually organize all that trip. She said if I'd done it myself, I would have been working for like $8 an hour to arrange all this. And so why would I do it myself when I can outsource it? And like, that person did it way better. Like, there's lots of things that were added that, she wouldn't have known about. There's tastings of this local shepherd's cheeses, and staying in the right villages that are, more spectacular. All the lodging was good. And so if you think of it like that, it's like, yeah, maybe you can save a couple $100 on your trip if you do it yourself. But if you're only going to go to a place once, to have it planned out by someone who lives in that area, who loves that
Hmm.
area, who wants to
Hmm.
show off where they lived the best possible way and kind of give you an insider's view. These self-guided tours, again, like a private guided tour is for the 1%, for people who are, they're spending thousands of dollars a day. The self-guided I always think it's like taking the VIP experience to the mass market of travelers.
Yeah, and there's certainly only so much you can gather doing your own research online from blogs and videos, and I love how you can kind of get that local knowledge and experience. But the best part is it's all at your own pace. So once you have the trip is
Yep.
planned, it sounds like you can just kind of go at your own and really, as you say, hike your own hike.
Yeah.
I would I would love to hear maybe a few tips for planning this. Things I should consider. Maybe some of the biggest mistakes that a first timer could have when they're doing these long distance backpacking, and maybe a couple of ways that I can avoid those pitfalls because I certainly am going to be looking and be booking a few of these trips very soon.
So, I'll just tell you my mistakes, because I know these are mistakes that people make, because 'cause I've made them. The first
I-
is jet lag. So, like, We
Mm.
always want to squeeze as much as we can. Okay, we've got 12 days in Europe. We got to be hiking day one. So we got to land, get a train and then start hiking. It is so hard to hike right off the plane. Um, I can't stress it enough. I know some people can do it. I sleep on the plane. I'm a great, I had a trip to Jordan where I had 2 overnight flights, back of the plane, economy, middle seat. Um, I had great sleeps. But I was still destroyed when I got to Jordan, and thank goodness I didn't have to do any like hardcore hiking right away. So build in a day just to get recovered before you do any serious hiking. Um, Jet lag is tough. So that's the first thing. Second thing is waiting too late to book. If there's a specific route you want to do, start thinking like I would start thinking now first, like the Lagavulin Trail in Iceland. There's 5 spaces left, I think, for all of 2025. Um, Tour du Mont Blanc is basically sold out for self-guided. I Altavia is sold out for self-guided. So these great trips, you can't leave it last minute. Um, but that's like most of the world, we can leave it last minute. So these great trips, there's just a really fixed capacity because they're served by their very small villages or mountain huts. The third thing is kind of 2 aspects. First, it's like build in time to enjoy your trip. So if you're new to this type of like trekking, it's different than just going for a day hike. And so you might want to build in a rest day, day 4 or 5. You know, kind of my example when we were on the Via Francigena, yeah, we can hike 25 to 30 kilometers a day and do big days. But that we made the wrong decision because there's so much beauty, and in the Rockies, when you're backpacking, you just look around and you're seeing everything. But when you're going through a little Italian village, you want to stop. You want to grab a cappuccino. Maybe you want to wander the alleyways, and maybe there's a market in town you want to look at. And so, um, build in rest days, but also maybe plan to go a bit slower, especially if you're going to be going through villages. And the last 2 are things that I did again just recently. I haven't had blisters in years, probably 15 years. I thought I am so accustomed to, my insoles. I don't get blisters anymore. So I bought brand new boots for the Via Francigena, and I had the worst blisters since 2002, I think, where I was hobbled. I hadn't ever actually walked in my orthotics as well. I had new orthotics that I don't use here in Canada, but I thought, a bit of arrogance, and I was in like I could barely walk, like I could barely move. It was so much pain. And so, this is simple. No matter how great your feet are or how accustomed you are, make sure you're accustomed to your boots. Subsequently, I've talked to a few people and they just say, "Oh yeah, it's the road walking." Your feet were good for mountain walking where you're on, dirt,
Mm.
and you're going up or down. But the Via Francigena has, I don't know, a quarter of it you're just walking on a road. And actually, where I had the blisters, where I got them, was a big day with a lot of road walking. And they say, "Oh yeah, that just destroys your feet." So, um, yeah, those are the mistakes I've made, and I've made all of them, in the last kinda, like, 5 years. I made them 10 years ago, and I made them 20 years ago, so I keep forgetting them, and then I make them again. I'm human. Was it to err is to be human, or to human is to be to
D-
err? I'm not sure, but
d-
that's me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's awesome, Richard. I'm loving this conversation, but I know we got to end it soon. I just want to end off on a really good high note here. Can you give me, kind of like some of your bucket list items for European treks you want to share?
It's long, it's very long. The number 1 goal, I mentioned this in other podcasts, is there are these, trails called, GRs. I mentioned them at the start as well. They're Grand
Hmm.
Randonnées. These are kinda like 4 to, maybe 25-week trails. I've done a few of them. The one I love is the GR5. There's a section that goes from essentially, Lac Le Mans, which is the Lake Geneva's on, all the way down to the French Alps to Nice. Uh, I wanna do that with my kids. I just absolutely love that trail. It's just stunning. Um, I've done parts of the Alta Via. I wanna do the complete Alta Via 1, and not just like, little bits here and there.
Yeah.
Um, there's a tour of Monte Rosa, the tour of the Jungfrau, my trip that, COVID canceled. There's an Alpine Pass route that goes across Switzerland. I think it's like 18 or 20 days. The West Highland Way in England, the Pennine Way in England, um, the Via Francigena from the, Grand St. Bernard Pass down to Lucca. Um, I'd love to do a walk on the like one of the Greek islands where you just got to go from village to village. And again,
Wow.
I love going swimming in the day. So do it in autumn when the Mediterranean's still warm, and you'd have a great walk, have some great food, and then go jump in the Mediterranean Sea. I could go on, but yeah. And then my wife and I talk about when we retire, we want to do like just walk across Europe. We had a podcast guest 2 years ago, and him and his wife were 70, I think, and his
Yeah.
name was also Richard, and they were walking from the farthest west point, I think, in Portugal, all the
Yeah.
way down to I think it was Turkey, and they were kind of
Yeah.
doing 3 or 4 thousand kilometers a summer. And I'm just like, okay, new life goal. I want to be these. This is going to be us, honey. We're going to spend just every spring or summer, autumn, just walking in Europe because it's just the nicest thing to do.
Well, that's awesome, Richard. Well, I am definitely inspired. For any of our listeners and viewers that are listening or watching this, can you let us know maybe what do you think's the best way to get started when planning their own trip, and I mean for myself as well.
Yeah, so there's so much variety, and so talking to somebody who's done a lot of this really helps nail down. So, starting
Yeah.
at what airports might you fly into, what type of trips do you want to do? If you've got friends who've done a lot, talk to your friends. If you don't have anyone that's done a lot of this, by all means, contact one of the team here at 10 Adventures. We're all adventure travelers. We all love doing this, and so whether or not you've done a ton of, you're super fit and you've done a ton of this, or it's just something you've wanted to do and this might be your first time. We know what it's like for every different type of person, from 20 something who's in great fitness to again, one of my favorite trips was an 80-year-old grandfather with, I think, his 8 or 10-year-old great granddaughter, showing the villages he
Wow.
lived in
Yeah.
on one of the islands in Greece. We have done kind of all the ranges of experience and skill and fitness, and yeah, we love helping people have these great experiences. So yeah, reach out to our contact us on 10 Adventures. Find a trip, just submit an inquiry, and yeah, we'll be there to help you find you the perfect trip for yourself.
Well, Richard, thanks very much for inspiring me in a very snowy day here in Canada. I think I have a lot to look at now and think about. I've really enjoyed this conversation, so I appreciate you having me on the podcast.
And Miko, thanks again. This is, I think it's number three. And, kind of in between doing all these, we've been having a little discussions of other things. And so I think we're going to bring it back for a few more of these as well. So it's kind of fun for me to find a way to share all my knowledge. And again, I'm just one person. I'm not a professional. These are all just my opinions, but it's fun to share, what I've learned kind of in 25 plus years of exploring the world on foot and by bike. So thank you so much for coming on and asking all these great questions. And for everyone, we'll be back next week to talk about incredible adventures. Thanks for listening in. Bye bye. Start planning your own adventure by visiting us at 10adventures.com and listen to other episodes of the 10 Adventures podcast on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you find your podcasts.